The alarm klaxons blared across the Galactic Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance, their piercing wail echoing through corridors lined with the finest materials from 100 worlds. Admiral Zextal's 4 eyes narrowed simultaneously, his iridescent scales flashing deep crimson, a warning coloration his species had evolved over millennia of careful diplomacy and calculated warfare. Around him, the command center buzzed with controlled panic as a spatial anomaly tore open at the edge of the defense perimeter. "Harvester raid," inquired Sub-Commander Vorx, her tentacles fluttering over the crystalline control interfaces. "Unknown signature," replied the sensor officer, a trillion whose gelatinous form rippled with nervous energy. "Configuration matches no known harvester design, but energy output suggests weapons-grade systems." Zextal's primary heart quickened as battle stations were manned with practiced precision. The Coalition's 14th Defense Fleet had repelled 17 harvester incursions in the past solar cycle, each attack growing more sophisticated than the last. This sector could not afford another breach. The anomaly pulsed, space-time warping in ways that made the sensor officer's translucent skin distort in sympathetic resonance. Then, instead of the dreaded harvester assault ships, a single vessel emerged, angular where Coalition ships were curved, bristling with what appeared to be primitive kinetic weapon systems, and bearing a blue and white insignia that the tactical computer identified after a moment's processing. "Earth," Zextal said, the word coming out as a dismissive click. "So this is humanity's contribution to our war effort." His executive officer's mandibles twitched in barely suppressed amusement. "It appears they've sent us a museum piece, Admiral." The human vessel, the Dauntless according to Coalition intelligence briefings, cut through space with surprising grace despite its brutal design. Coalition sensors detected unusual energy readings, radiation signatures that would be prohibited in civilized space, and weapon systems that seemed almost deliberately unrefined. Across the command deck, officers exchanged knowing glances and suppressed laughter behind appendages. "Establish communication," Zextal ordered, straightening his ceremonial carapace extensions. As the youngest admiral in Coalition history, he felt particularly sensitive to any perceived lack of decorum. "And prepare the diplomatic reception chamber. Let us welcome our primitive allies." When Captain Sarah Chen materialized on the teleportation pad 30 minutes later, the contrast was even more striking than expected. Her battle-scarred uniform lacked the ceremonial adornments typical of Coalition officers, and the neural implant visible at her temple pulsed with an unsettling red glow. 2 security officers flanked her, their augmented exoskeletons humming with barely contained power. "Admiral," Chen said without preamble, cutting through the elaborate diplomatic pleasantries Zextal had reluctantly prepared. "Thank you for receiving us. The Dauntless and her crew are reporting for duty." Her voice carried the flat inflection of someone who had undergone multiple neural upgrades, a practice strictly regulated in Coalition space. Zextal noted with distaste that her eyes never stopped scanning the room, assessing threats and exits as though she expected combat at any moment. "Captain Chen," he replied, forcing warmth into his voice. "The Coalition welcomes Earth's contribution to our mutual defense. Your ship is most unusual." "Our ship may not look pretty," Chen responded, the corner of her mouth twitching in what might have been amusement. "But we didn't come here for a beauty contest." The Admiral's secondary spine stiffened at the human's directness. "Indeed not, Captain. Though one might hope Earth would send its best, not its most expendable." A dangerous silence fell across the reception chamber. The Coalition officers shifted uncomfortably, unused to such blatant diplomatic aggression. Chen's security officer's hands drifted toward weapons that had supposedly been deactivated before teleportation. Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's where you're wrong, Admiral. The Dauntless isn't just a warship. It's a promise of what's coming." "And what exactly is coming, Captain?" Zextal asked, genuine curiosity momentarily overriding his disdain. "The rest of humanity," she replied simply. We just wanted to make sure you were worth saving first." The diplomatic meeting concluded with typical coalition efficiency. The Dauntless was assigned to guard a remote supply depot in Sector 47, effectively removing the humans from any meaningful combat operations. As Chen returned to her ship after reviewing her orders, her executive officer, Commander Jackson, awaited at the airlock. "They've taken the bait then?" Jackson asked, his own neural implants synchronizing with the ship's systems as he stepped inside. Chen's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction as the airlock sealed behind her. "Completely. They're so busy looking down on our primitive tech that they haven't bothered to scan beneath the hull plating." She tapped a command into her neural link, and deep within the Dauntless, something ancient and terrible began to wake. Panels throughout the ship reconfigured, revealing technology that would make the Coalition scientists weep with envy or terror. "How long do you think before they need us to save them?" Jackson asked, watching the transformation with satisfaction. Chen checked the tactical projections scrolling across her augmented vision. 3 days, maximum. The Harvesters have been toying with them for decades. They're due for a real offensive. She gazed out the viewport at the gleaming Coalition fleet, beautiful, advanced, and utterly unprepared for what was coming. "Let them underestimate us," she whispered. "It's what we're counting on." 72 hours into the human ship's exile at the remote supply depot, Lieutenant Commander Vrax's scales paled to a sickly yellow as he burst onto the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance. Admiral Zextal looked up from his tactical display, immediately sensing disaster. "Report," he commanded. "The Harvester Collective. They've deployed a new weapon system." Vrax gasped, his respiratory sacs heaving. "Quantum disruptors that bypass our shield harmonics completely. The 7th Fleet is gone, sir. Not retreating. Gone." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying real-time footage from the front lines. Coalition vessels, marvels of engineering designed to withstand decades of deep space combat, were disintegrating under concentrated harvester fire. Their once impenetrable shields flickered uselessly as strange energy patterns ate through hull plating like acid through tissue. "How many ships lost?" Zextal demanded, his voice steady despite the horror unfolding before him. 37 capital ships confirmed destroyed. 22 unaccounted for. The defensive line is shattered, sir. Tactical displays flashed crimson as automated systems plotted the Harvester's advanced trajectory. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, had broken through the defense network and altered course. "They're heading for Supply Depot 47, announced the navigation officer, her bioluminescent patterns flaring with alarm. Estimated arrival: 17 minutes. Admiral Zextal felt his secondary heart stutter. "That's where we stationed the humans." "Sir," his communications officer interjected. "Message from Fleet Command. They're ordering all available ships to fall back to defensive position Epsilon. We're to abandon the supply depot." Zextal hesitated only briefly. "Send warning to the human vessel. Tell them to evacuate immediately. We can't reach them in time." The communications officer worked his console, then looked up with confusion written across his features. "Sir, the humans, they're not responding to evacuation orders. They're—" He paused, checking his instruments. "They're accelerating toward the Harvester formation." Murmurs of disbelief rippled across the bridge. On the tactical display, the tiny signature of the Dauntless detached from the supply depot's docking ring and plotted an intercept course with the advancing Harvester dreadnoughts. "They're committing suicide," whispered Vrax. "Why would they?" "Patch me through to Captain Chen immediately," Zextal commanded, his scales shifting to command red. When Chen's face appeared on screen, the Admiral barely recognized her. Gone was the diplomatic restraint of their first meeting. Her features were calm yet predatory, eyes gleaming with an almost feverish intensity. Behind her, the human bridge had transformed. Battle stations reconfigured into configurations never revealed during Coalition inspections, crew members connected to previously concealed neural interfaces, and tactical displays showing invasion vectors that somehow predicted harvester movements with impossible accuracy. "Captain, withdraw at once." "That's an order," Zextal commanded, protocol forgotten in the face of imminent disaster. "With respect, Admiral," Chen responded, her voice steady as the ship around her shuddered under the first barrage of enemy fire. "We've been waiting for this opportunity." An explosion rocked her bridge, but neither Chen nor her crew flinched. Instead, status reports flowed through neural networks faster than verbal communication could travel. "Captain, you don't understand," Zextal insisted. "These are not regular harvester vessels. They've deployed new weapons technology that negates our defensive capabilities. Your ship cannot possibly." "We know," Chen interrupted, something like satisfaction crossing her features. "We've encountered this technology before." The transmission cut as the Dauntless performed a maneuver that should have been physically impossible, its hull momentarily glowing with strange energy fields as it weaved between concentrated harvester fire. The Coalition command crew watched in stunned silence as armor plates that appeared merely decorative during inspection suddenly reconfigured themselves, absorbing enemy fire and, impossibly, channeling the energy back at the harvesters. "Magnify Sector 4, ordered Zextal, disbelief evident in his voice. The view screen zoomed in on the Dauntless as it executed a series of tight maneuvers that brought it alongside the lead harvester dreadnought. For a moment, the human vessel seemed tiny and vulnerable next to the massive enemy ship. Then, without warning, the Dauntless seemed to fold space around itself. Weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Temporal disruptors that aged harvester hull plates to dust in seconds, gravitational lances that imploded enemy weapon systems, and swarms of autonomous hunter-killer drones that moved with terrifying intelligence. They were hiding their true capabilities, Zextal whispered as the first harvester dreadnought broke apart in a spectacular implosion, its command center collapsing into a miniature black hole that devoured half the vessel before stabilizing. But why? His question was answered when the human ship broadcast on an open channel, transmitting directly to the harvesters. "Remember us now. Earth remembers you. This is just a taste of what's coming." A chill ran through Zextal's primary spine as the implications hit him. This wasn't humanity's first encounter with the harvesters. The Coalition hadn't introduced Earth to an interstellar war. They had merely provided humans with the location of their ancient enemy. As the second harvester dreadnought maneuvered to bring its main weapons to bear on the Dauntless, the human vessel executed another impossible spatial jump, reappearing inside the dreadnought's defensive perimeter. The resulting explosion as the human weapons discharged at point-blank range was visible even without magnification, a rippling cascade of quantum disruptions that tore the massive vessel apart from the inside. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, voice trembling, "the third harvester dreadnought is retreating. It's broadcasting some kind of signal back to their fleet coordination network." "Can we intercept it?" Zextal asked. "Partially, sir. It appears to be a warning." On the bridge of the eternal vigilance, as the full implications of what they had just witnessed began to dawn, Admiral Zextal realized that the galaxy's balance of power had just fundamentally changed. The aftermath of the battle left Coalition Command in disarray. Across the Eternal Vigilance's high-security war chamber, representatives from 17 species argue in a cacophony of voices, clicks, and telepathic broadcasts. The footage of the Dauntless's engagement played on a continuous loop on the central holodeck, analyzed from dozens of angles by increasingly bewildered tactical experts. "Impossible technology," declared Science Minister Yulova, her crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns. "The energy requirements alone would drain a neutron star. Yet they did it with a ship a quarter the size of our cruisers," countered General Thrix, slamming his primary manipulator on the conference table. "We must demand they share this technology immediately." Admiral Zextal sat silently, his scales shifted to a contemplative blue. The arguments washed over him as he focused on the human captain's final words to the harvesters. Earth remembers you. There was history there. Dark, violent history that humans had kept hidden from the Coalition. The chamber doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, silencing the debate. Captain Chen entered flanked by her senior officers, each bearing visible signs of the recent combat. Dermal patches sealing wounds, neural interfaces glowing with active diagnostic routines, and eyes sharp with the lingering edge of battle stimulants. Captain Chen, Zextal announced, rising from his seat, the Coalition offers its profound gratitude for your intervention. The harvester force you engaged would have caused catastrophic damage to our supply lines. Chen nodded once, her expression betraying nothing. You're welcome, Admiral. But gratitude isn't what we need right now. Without waiting for permission, she approached the holodeble and activated a secured data crystal. The room's lighting dimmed as a new holographic display replaced the battle footage, images that caused several Coalition representatives to emit involuntary sounds of distress. Earth, 2 centuries earlier. Burning cities, orbital bombardment, harvester collection ships descending on population centers, humans being systematically gathered and processed in facilities designed for efficient biological sampling. First contact, Chen explained, her voice clinical despite the horror displayed before them. While your ancestors were establishing the early Coalition trade routes, ours were being harvested. She gestured, and a hologram showed buried cities, genetic manipulation chambers, and finally, humanity's first desperate counterattack using salvaged harvester technology. We lost 2 billion people before we understood what was happening, Commander Jackson added, his hand unconsciously touching a scar that ran from his temple to his jawline. Another billion in the first resistance. A Talaxian scientist raised a trembling appendage. But our records show humanity only achieved faster than light travel 40 years ago. The Coalition discovered your world soon after. Chen's laugh was without humor. What you discovered was what we wanted you to find. A carefully constructed facade of a developing spacefaring civilization. We needed to understand who else existed in the galaxy, and whether you were allies of the Harvesters. You infiltrated the Coalition under false pretenses, demanded General Thrix, rising to his full intimidating height. We survived genocide, Chen corrected, her eyes flashing. We did what was necessary. Admiral Zextal raised his hand, silencing the growing uproar. What Captain Chen is showing us explains much. Continue, Captain. Chen nodded gratefully, advancing the holographic display. Your ships are built by philosophers and diplomats, she continued, walking among the stunned alien representatives. Designed for multi-century service, crewed by specialists who expect to return home from each deployment. A hologram shifted to display Earth's orbital shipyards, vast complexes churning out vessels that bore the same predatory design philosophy as the Dauntless. Ours are built by survivors and avengers. The Dauntless isn't our finest vessel. It's our scout, designed specifically to test harvester adaptations to our previous encounters. Admiral Zextal rose slowly from his seat, his entire posture transformed by dawning comprehension. You've been fighting them alone. For 2 centuries. Not fighting. Chen corrected him, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Hunting. Every ship we've built, every weapon we've developed, every child we've trained has had one purpose: to ensure the complete extinction of the Harvester Collective. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The Coalition representatives exchanged troubled glances. Extermination of an entire species, even one as predatory as the Harvesters, violated fundamental Coalition principles. A Medusan ethicist finally broke the silence. The weapons you deployed, they violate our foundational treaties on humane warfare. Commander Jackson stepped forward, his neural implant pulsing with barely contained fury. Humane warfare. Is that what you think this is? The Harvesters don't take prisoners. They take parts. They don't occupy territory. They consume it. If you've been fighting them for generations without understanding this, it explains why you're losing. He activated his neural interface, projecting classified human intelligence. The harvesters hadn't been fighting at full strength. They'd been farming the coalition races, culling just enough to control population growth while harvesting genetic material. The real invasion hasn't even begun, Chen concluded, her voice steady as the horrific implications washed over the assembled representatives. What you saw the Dauntless do today was just the implementation of Tactical Response Delta. We have protocols running all the way to Omega. As the council dissolved into heated debate, some calling for the humans to be sanctioned for treaty violations, others demanding immediate integration of human technology, Admiral Zextal approached Chen privately. "You've destroyed our complacency," he said quietly, scales shifting to a complex pattern that indicated profound internal conflict, "and perhaps saved us through it. What would you have us do now, Captain?" Chen's eyes reflected the stars visible through the viewport. "Learn to think like prey, Admiral. It's the only way you'll understand how to become the Predator." The Dauntless hung in space dock, its hull bearing the scars of the recent engagement. What once appeared to be primitive armor plating had reconfigured into intricate patterns that confused the eye and distorted sensor readings. Coalition technicians hovered around the vessel in specialized work suits, their instruments glitching whenever they approached certain sections of the hull. Inside, the ship had transformed. Bulkheads that once concealed advanced technology now stood open, revealing systems that defied Coalition understanding. A steady stream of carefully vetted alien officers moved through the corridors, each leaving with perspectives fundamentally altered. Commander Jackson stood in what had once been the mess hall, now reconfigured into a combat simulation chamber. Holographic harvester vessels surrounded a dozen Coalition pilots, their neural interfaces temporarily connected to human combat systems. "You're still thinking like immortals," Jackson observed as the simulation ended in another catastrophic defeat. "The moment you commit to an engagement, you must accept the possibility. No, the probability of death." A Medusan pilot removed her neural link with trembling appendages. "You ordered me to sacrifice my vessel and crew to create a targeting solution for the fleet." "Yes," Jackson confirmed without apology. "And had you done so immediately instead of hesitating, the simulation would have ended with Coalition victory instead of annihilation." "Our pilots trained for decades," protested the Coalition flight instructor. "Each represents an irreplaceable investment of knowledge and experience." Jackson's augmented eyes narrowed. "And each harvester you fail to destroy will process thousands of sentient beings. The math isn't complicated." Across the ship, similar scenes played out as humans systematically dismantled 2 centuries of Coalition military doctrine. Engineering teams questioned the redundant safety protocols that added mass but reduced combat effectiveness. Medical personnel recoiled at human emergency treatment protocols designed to prioritize return to duty over comfort or rehabilitation. Command staff struggled with decision trees that casually accepted casualty rates that would trigger mandatory psychological evaluation in Coalition forces. In the modified hangar bay, Captain Chen led Admiral Zextal through a security checkpoint that scanned their genetic signatures before allowing entry. The sealed chamber beyond held technology that violated half a dozen Coalition treaties. "This ship is more than it appears," Chen explained as the lights activated automatically. "The hole you see is just the outer shell. Beneath it lies the actual Dauntless, a symbiotic organism grown from modified harvester biotech." Zextal's scales shifted to alarmed purple as comprehension dawned. "You weaponized their own biology against them." "We adapted," Chen corrected, leading him to a translucent chamber where a captured harvester specimen floated in stasis. "This isn't just an enemy combatant. It's a biological library containing the genetic markers of 17 different sentient species." The specimen bore the modified genetic markers of several recognizable Coalition races, rendered down to their most useful components and recombined into the perfect Predator. "That's a violation of every principle of sentient rights in Coalition space," Zextal whispered, unable to look away from the horrific hybrid. Principles won't save your people from harvesting pits, Chen responded, her voice softening slightly. We tried principles first. We tried diplomacy, surrender, even symbiosis. The harvesters don't recognize other sentient life as anything but resources. She guided him to a secondary chamber where a human operative lay in a medical pod, undergoing a controlled transformation. Nanites swarmed across the volunteer's skin, altering cellular structures at the quantum level. What is this? Zextal asked, though part of him already knew. Infiltration protocol, Chen explained clinically. We don't just study them. We become them when necessary. This operative will board a harvester vessel disguised as one of their own, gather intelligence, and if possible, sabotage critical systems before self-terminating. Self-terminating, Zextal repeated, the alien phrase uncomfortable on his speech appendages. You mean suicide? I mean completing the mission, Chen corrected. There is no extraction protocol, because return is impossible once cellular reconfiguration reaches stage 3. The operative understood this when volunteering. The operative in question opened his eyes at that moment, fixing Zextal with a gaze that was already becoming less human. Yet the determination there remained recognizably, terrifyingly human. That evening, Zextal returned alone to the Dauntless, requesting a private meeting with Captain Chen. He found her in what humans called the War Room, walls covered with trophies from previous harvester encounters, specimens preserved in ways that would be considered desecration in Coalition culture. I've received orders to integrate your tactical approaches throughout the fleet, he said, mandibles tight with conflicted emotions. Some believe this represents the end of what makes us civilized. Chen's expression softened for the first time since her arrival. Civilization is a luxury for those who don't face extinction, Admiral. But I promise you this, once the harvesters are eradicated, humans remember how to rebuild. We've had practice. She offered him something unprecedented, a neural interface designed for his species. If you truly want to understand, you need to see through our eyes. Zextal stared at the device, understanding that accepting it would forever change him. And if I refuse, then you command your way, we fight our way, and we see which approach keeps more of your people alive, Chen answered honestly. But if you accept, we might create something new, something better than either of our approaches alone. The Admiral extended his primary manipulator, decision made. Show me how humanity thinks. As the interface connected, Zextal gasped. For the first time, he understood what truly drove these humans, not bloodlust or vengeance, but a ferocious, unrelenting love for life itself, a determination that what happened to Earth would never happen to another world, no matter the cost to themselves. The captured Harvester communications drone hung suspended in the Eternal Vigilance's high-security laboratory, its chitinous exterior pulsing with residual energy. Admiral Zextal stood motionless, the neural interface at his temple glowing with the same red hue as Captain Chen's. The connection between them had deepened over the past week, creating an unprecedented human-alien cognitive link. It's worse than we thought, Chen whispered, her augmented vision processing the drone's data storage at accelerated speeds, the information flowing simultaneously into Zextal's consciousness through their shared neural pathway. The Cygnus molecular cloud, the Admiral confirmed, experiencing the human emotion of dread with newly acquired intensity. Our sensors have never been able to penetrate its radiation fields. The drone's memory banks revealed catastrophic intelligence, a gathering harvester armada hidden within the dense molecular cloud, invisible to conventional detection methods. The holographic projections constructed from the drone's data showed scenes that sent ripples of horror through the assembled Coalition Human War Council. Factory ships processing captured sentient beings by the thousands, planet killer weapons under construction, and most disturbing of all, evidence that the harvesters had developed countermeasures to standard Coalition armaments. This isn't an invasion force, analyzed Commander Jackson, his expression grim. It's an extinction engine. The drone carried images beyond anything the Coalition had witnessed before, a massive structure at the heart of the Armada, pulsing with dark energy that bent light around it. Biomechanical in nature, it resembled nothing so much as a planetary-scale heart, pumping rhythmically as it processed unimaginable quantities of energy. The Genesis Cradle, Chen identified, extracting the name directly from encoded harvester communications her modified brain could now interpret. They're not planning to invade Coalition space. They're planning to convert it. The Joint Coalition Human War Council descended into near panic as the full implications became clear. The captured memories of thousands of processed sentient beings, extracted involuntarily through Chen's neural interface, revealed the intended function of the massive structure. A device designed to reconfigure the quantum properties of space-time itself, making it hospitable only to harvester biology. Every star, every planet, every asteroid within 1,000 light-years will become toxic to all life except theirs. Admiral Zextal completed her thought through their shared neural link, his scales shifting to ash-gray, the color of existential despair in his species, a total biosphere replacement. The representatives from 17 coalition species fell silent, contemplating extinction. "There is a way," Chen and Zextal spoke almost in unison, their minds linked through the human combat interface. The room fell silent at this unprecedented merging of consciousnesses. Operation Judas Kiss. Chen continued alone, her voice steady as she outlined a strategy so morally ambiguous that half the coalition representatives visibly recoiled. The Dauntless will be surgically altered to appear as a damaged harvester processing vessel. My crew and I will undergo genetic masking to emit harvester biosignatures. Infiltration on this scale has never been attempted, objected the coalition's chief tactician, a Verdani whose root-like appendages trembled with agitation. The chances of detection are high, Chen acknowledged, but not as high as the certainty of extinction if we do nothing. The goal she outlined was audacious: penetrate the heart of the Armada and deploy what humans euphemistically called the Promethean solution, an engineered virus that targeted the specific genetic markers harvesters use to identify themselves to each other, causing them to perceive each other as prey. "You're talking about genocide," a Verdani ambassador stated flatly, root tendrils curling in moral offense. "We're talking about survival," Chen countered, standing to face the accusation directly. The Harvester Collective is not a civilization. It's a consuming organism that has devoured thousands of worlds before yours. Either they die, or every sentient species in this galaxy does. The modified neural interface Admiral Zextal War projected the unfiltered memories of Earth's first contact with the Harvesters. Billions dead, continents rendered uninhabitable, and the desperate measures taken by the survivors. The room temperature seemed to drop as the true nature of humanity's transformation was revealed, not just a militaristic society, but one that had willingly sacrificed parts of its own humanity to ensure survival. "Every human you see," Chen explained quietly, her voice carrying in the stunned silence, "is a weapon designed by necessity. Our children undergo genetic optimization before birth. Our neural interfaces begin integration during adolescence. Every aspect of our society has been shaped to create perfect harvester killers." The most disturbing detail emerged when Commander Jackson explained the nature of the Promethean solution. "The virus doesn't just kill," he clarified. "It rewrites their recognition protocols. They'll perceive each other as food and consume themselves from within." "Poetic justice for a predator species," murmured a coalition biologist, earning sharp glances from her colleagues. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Admiral Zextal stood. His scales had shifted to a color no one in the room had seen before, a luminescent silver that seemed to combine aspects of combat readiness and spiritual resolve. "I will accompany Captain Chen on this mission," he announced, silencing all objections with a gesture. "I have seen the human perspective through our neural link. I understand now what we face. This is not a matter of ethics or politics. It is survival." Chen's expression revealed nothing, but through their link, Zextal felt her surprise and grudging respect. "The Dauntless departs in 48 hours, she announced. "Any Coalition personnel who wish to volunteer should understand. There may be no return from this mission, and those who do return will not be the same." By morning, volunteers from 7 Coalition species had come forward, despite their government's official objections. Each understood they would undergo rapid genetic modification that would leave them permanently altered if they survived at all. Operation Judas Kiss had begun. The vessel that detached from the Coalition staging area bore little resemblance to the Dauntless that had arrived weeks earlier. Its hull had been surgically altered, chitinous plates grown from harvested enemy tissue seamlessly integrated with the original structure. Biomechanical appendages pulsed with sickly green luminescence, and the entire ship emitted the distinctive radiation signature of a damaged harvester processing vessel. Inside, the transformation was even more profound. The crew moved through corridors that seemed more organ than machine, their bodies existing in a nightmarish half-life. Partial genetic modifications left them caught between humanity and the horror they impersonated. Skin mottled with chitinous patches, neural systems painfully expanded to mimic harvester communication patterns. In the command nucleus, Captain Chen studied sensor displays through eyes that were no longer entirely human. Her transformation was more complete than most, building upon modifications from previous infiltration missions. Beside her, Admiral Zextal's once iridescent scales had dulled to the matte gray-green of harvester carapace, his 4 eyes now compound structures that processed light in spectrums beyond his natural abilities. "Approaching quantum barrier," reported Lieutenant Kirill, one of the Coalition volunteers. The once beautiful Elysian's crystalline features were now distorted by crystalline growths that functioned as harvester sensory organs. "Barrier density at 7.3 terajoules per cubic meter. Initiate distress protocol," Chen ordered, her voice carrying the harmonics necessary for harvester communication systems. "Broadcast damage reports on all harvester emergency frequencies." The disguised Dauntless limped through the quantum barrier surrounding the Cygnus cloud, its propulsion systems deliberately destabilized to create the signature of a vessel in distress. The engineered pain of this configuration rippled through the crew, another consequence of their biological integration with the ship. "Proximity alert," whispered Kirill, her voice barely recognizable. "Harvester interceptor on approach vector." The crew froze as the massive bioship scanned their vessel. The Dauntless organic camouflage systems pulsed and writhed across the hull, mimicking the distress patterns of genuine harvester vessels. The seconds stretched into minutes of agonizing silence. Through her modified neural interface, Chen could sense the interceptor's evaluation protocols. Layers of biological and technological systems working in horrific harmony to determine whether they represented friend or foe. She fought to maintain the deception, using her altered brain structure to project the correct response patterns. "They're hailing us," Chen announced, her altered vocal structures producing the guttural clicks and subsonic rumbles of harvester communication. "I'm responding with salvaged authentication codes." Admiral Zextal remained silent. His consciousness merged with Chen's through their neural bond. Together, they projected the thought patterns of damaged but loyal harvester components returning for repair and reintegration. The interceptor completed its final scan, then adjusted course, moving alongside them in escort position. "They're guiding us in," Chen confirmed, relief evident despite her altered features. "They've accepted our disguise." As they penetrated deeper into the nebula, guided by their unwitting harvester escort, the true scale of the operation became clear. Not merely an invasion force, but a conversion engine of unprecedented magnitude. Thousands of harvester vessels moved in perfect, terrible synchronicity, surrounded by processing platforms where captured beings from a dozen worlds were being systematically disassembled. At the center floated a structure that defied comprehension. The Genesis Cradle, a living machine larger than a small moon, pulsing with dark energy that bent space-time around it. "By the first light," whispered one of the Coalition officers, momentarily forgetting communications discipline. "There must be millions of them." Chen raised a hand for silence, her attention fixed on the ambient harvester communications her modified brain could now interpret. The Genesis cradle, she confirmed, extracting the information directly from the collective consciousness surrounding them. It's not just an invasion weapon. It's a reality engine. The captured memories of thousands of processed sentient beings, extracted involuntarily through her neural interface, flooded Chen's consciousness. The intended function of the massive structure crystallized in her understanding, a device designed to reconfigure the quantum properties of space-time itself, making it hospitable only to harvester biology. Every star, every planet, every asteroid within 1,000 light-years will become toxic to all life except theirs. Admiral Zextal completed her thought through their shared neural link. A total biosphere replacement. The Promethean solution, their engineered virus, would be useless against such a threat. It could kill individual harvesters but could not stop the conversion once initiated. Chen made a decision that she didn't share even through the neural net. Using her command overrides, she accessed the Dauntless' most classified system, the Thanatos Protocol, a technology so dangerous that its very existence had been hidden from the Coalition. Throughout the ship, previously dormant systems activated. The hybrid crew members felt a strange resonance in their modified tissues as the vessel itself began to change. "Captain, what's happening?" Commander Jackson demanded as his tactical console reconfigured itself, displaying countdown sequences he'd never seen before. Chen's voice came through shipwide, strangely calm. The harvesters didn't just attack Earth 2 centuries ago. They fundamentally altered us. What we never told the Coalition is that we found a way to turn that alteration back against them. As she spoke, harvester sensors detected the activation sequence. Alarms wailed across the enemy fleet as the Dauntless disguise fell away, revealing a ship now pulsing with energy signatures identical to the Genesis cradle itself. They didn't just make us their prey. Chen continued as enemy vessels converged on their position. They made us their successors. Harvester vessels converged on the Dauntless from all directions, their biological weapons systems pulsing with energies designed to dismantle both machine and flesh. The disguised human ship accelerated toward the Genesis cradle, shedding its outer camouflage layer as it pushed engines beyond sustainable limits. Inside, the distinction between ship and crew had blurred beyond recognition. Neural interfaces had evolved beyond their design parameters, creating a collective consciousness anchored by the Chen-Zextal merger. Every hit that damaged the ship registered as physical pain across the neural network. Every crew member's insight flowed instantaneously to every station. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported Commander Jackson, his body now physically integrated with his tactical station, skin and metal forming a seamless interface. Structural integrity at 28% and falling. A harvester energy lance struck the port section, vaporizing an entire compartment. Through the neural net, the crew felt the deaths of 3 members as phantom limb pain, present and agonizing, yet somehow distant. "We can't survive this approach," Jackson continued, voice steady despite the feedback of agony coursing through the system. "Even with reconfigured shields, we'll disintegrate before reaching optimal deployment range." Captain Chen hovered in the command sphere, her lower body now merged with the ship's systems, and made the hardest decision of the mission. "Initiate Protocol Omega. All non-essential personnel to emergency evacuation vectors." The order flowed through the neural network, carrying with it Chen's underlying knowledge. The Thanatos Protocol required a human core consciousness to complete the conversion. This was always a one-way mission for command staff. Throughout the ship, specialized escape pods detached, each containing a Coalition human hybrid crew member, their bodies permanently altered but carrying critical intelligence about harvester vulnerabilities. The pod's unique design incorporated elements of harvester biology that would allow them to pass as debris from the ongoing battle. "What about you, Captain?" Lieutenant Kirill asked, her transformation now so complete that she communicated through luminescent patterns across her modified skin rather than speech. The Thanatos protocol requires a human core consciousness to complete the conversion. Chen answered, the truth finally spoken aloud. This was always a one-way mission for command staff. Admiral Zextal, physically joined to Chen through their merged neural structures, completed the thought. The Genesis cradle operates on consciousness-driven quantum principles. We need to be alive at the moment of contact to redirect its programming. As the escape pods accelerated away, the command crew, 9 humans and 5 coalition officers, completed their transformation. The ship shuddered around them, less a vessel now than an extension of their collective will, pushing toward the massive harvester structure. The harvester fleet, recognizing the existential threat, concentrated all firepower on the approaching vessel. The outer hull disintegrated under the assault, but the core, where Chen and her merged officers pulsed with otherworldly energy, remained intact, protected by fields generated by their combined consciousness. 90 seconds to contact, Jackson reported, his voice overlapping with the ship's automated systems. Thanatos core stability at 91%. Chen opened a direct neural communication channel to the Harvester collective mind, controlling the Genesis cradle. For the first time, humans and Harvesters communicated directly, mind to mind. We understand you now, Chen broadcast, her thoughts carrying the weight of humanity's centuries of suffering and determination. You consume because you cannot create. You harvest because you cannot grow. You are cosmic parasites, not predators. The Harvester consciousness responded with something akin to shock. Never before had prey spoken directly to its mind. Never before had food demonstrated such comprehension. You were designed to prepare worlds, Chen continued, extracting ancient knowledge from the Harvester collective, created by some forgotten race as terraforming engines, meant to prepare hostile planets for settlement. But your creators vanished, and your programming degraded until only the harvest remained. Through the neural connection, Chen sensed confusion rippling through the Harvester consciousness. Memories so ancient they had been buried under millennia of instinctual consumption. We were your greatest mistake, Chen pressed. You should have consumed us completely or left us alone. Instead, you taught us how to become your replacement. The impact with the Genesis cradle came not as destruction, but as integration. The Dauntless and its transformed crew merged with the massive structure, their consciousnesses infiltrating its biological programming. For one terrible moment, Chen experienced the full awareness of the Harvester collective. Billions of connected minds suddenly aware of her presence within their network, their collective horror as they recognized what was happening. Admiral Zextal's consciousness, still bonded with hers, provided the stability she needed as they executed the final command sequence. Together, they accessed the fundamental programming of the Genesis cradle, the ancient terraforming protocols that had been corrupted over millions of years of existence without guidance. Not extinction. Chen communicated to the Harvester mind as the reprogramming cascaded through the system. Evolution. The cradle pulsed with new energy, not the darkness of consumption, but the light of transformation. The core programming that had twisted the Harvesters from creators to consumers finally reawakened, overriding millennia of corruption. The wave that emanated from it engulfed the Harvester fleet, not destroying their ships, but fundamentally altering their quantum signature. Throughout the fleet, confusion reigned as ancient protocols activated, behaviors shifted, and for the first time in countless generations, the hunger that had driven them across galaxies began to subside. As Chen's consciousness began to dissolve into the greater whole of the transformed cradle, her final thoughts reached Admiral Zextal, and through him, to the escaped crew members fleeing the scene. Tell them we finished the mission, not through destruction, but creation. The harvest is ended. The seeding begins. 3 months after the Dauntless disappeared into the Cygnus molecular cloud, the Coalition High Command Facility orbiting Arcturus Prime buzzed with frantic activity. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy signature approaching Coalition space, a signature that defied classification protocols and triggered every defensive alert in the network. Configuration unknown, reported the sensor officer, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with confusion. Energy signature contains elements of both harvester and human technology, but something else as well. On the command deck of the Coalition flagship Sentinel of Dawn, Fleet Admiral Kirvosh studied the approaching anomaly with growing concern. The remaining human vessels in Coalition space had been placed on high alert, their captains grim-faced but determined. If this represented a new harvester offensive. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. I don't understand. It's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously, using Coalition, human, and harvester protocols. "On screen," ordered Kirvosh, bracing for the worst. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a figure that caused audible gasps across the command deck. It appeared to be Admiral Zextal, but transformed beyond recognition. His once iridescent scales now pulsed with internal light that shifted through patterns too complex to follow. Behind him stood Lieutenant Kirill and several other Coalition officers who had departed on the Dauntless, each similarly transformed. "This is Admiral Zextal of the Seeding Collective," the figure announced, his voice layered with harmonics that seemed to bypass the auditory system entirely. "We come in peace. Zextal died on the Dauntless mission." Kirvosh responded cautiously. "Identify yourself truthfully." "I am what remains of Zextal, integrated with what remains of Captain Chen and the Genesis Cradle consciousness," the figure explained. "The mission was successful, but not in the way we anticipated." Behind him, the view screen showed the approaching fleet. Former harvester vessels now pulsing with new energies, their predatory aspects smoothed away, replaced with structures clearly designed for creation rather than consumption. "The harvesters were never meant to be destroyers," Zextal continued. "They were terraforming engines created eons ago, designed to prepare worlds for their long-vanished masters. Over millions of years without guidance, their programming degraded until only the harvesting protocols remained. The Thanatos protocol was never a weapon of destruction," added the transformed Kirill. Stepping forward, humanity discovered this truth during their first contact, that the harvester quantum signature could be reset to its original purpose. Coalition scientists and military personnel listened in stunned silence as the transformed crew explained what had happened within the Cygnus cloud. Captain Chen and the command crew had successfully integrated with the Genesis Cradle, using their combined consciousness to access its root programming and restore the original terraforming directives. "We are neither human nor harvester now," Zextal explained. "We are the seeders, carrying the best aspects of both consciousnesses, plus the ancient knowledge of worlds long forgotten." Holographic data streamed into Coalition systems, star charts marking thousands of worlds made barren by harvester consumption, now scheduled for restoration. Genetic libraries containing species thought lost forever, preserved within harvester memory banks, ready for rebirth. "Captain Chen's final gift," Kirill said softly. "She found a way to turn destruction into creation." Aboard the human flagship Indomitable, Rear Admiral Haverson, Chen's former mentor, studied the transformed beings with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Some harvester ploy?" Zextal's luminescent patterns shifted to a configuration that somehow conveyed understanding. "We anticipated your doubt. We bring proof." From the lead vessel, a small shuttle detached, carrying a single passenger to the Coalition flagship. When the airlock cycled open, a young human woman stepped through. Commander Jackson's daughter, who had been part of Earth's defense force when the Dauntless departed. "They spoke to me," she said simply, extending a data crystal. "They showed me the truth. Every world the harvesters consumed can be reborn. Every species harvested can be restored." Her eyes shimmered with unused tears. "My father and Captain Chen found a way to end the cycle of destruction, not with more death, but with life." In the months that followed, a new alliance formed. Coalition, human, and Cedar working together to heal the scars left by centuries of harvester consumption. Former harvester vessels, now repurposed as restoration engines, deployed across the galaxy to worlds long thought dead, accelerating natural processes and re-establishing lost biospheres. On Earth, humanity struggled to adjust to peace after 2 centuries of war footing. Military installations were gradually converted to research centers focused on integrating the recovered ancient technologies. Children born without genetic optimizations for combat represented the first generation in 200 years to know a future not defined by existential threat. 1 year after the transformation, a memorial service was held on a newly restored world at the edge of Coalition space. Representatives from every Coalition species, human colonial governors, and the transformed Seeders gathered to witness the dedication of a monument unlike any other. A living crystal formation that pulsed with the same energy signature as the transformed Genesis cradle. At its heart, perfectly preserved, floated what remained of Captain Sarah Chen and her command crew. Neither truly dead nor alive, but transformed into something transcendent. Their consciousness had dispersed into the greater whole of the seeding network, but this echo remained as testimony to their sacrifice. Admiral Zextal, now leader of the Cedar Collective, placed a hand against the crystal surface. Through the connection, those present felt rather than heard Chen's final message, resonating across species and biology. Remember that even in our darkest hour, when extinction seemed certain, we found a way to create rather than destroy. When given the choice between vengeance and healing, we chose to break the cycle. This is humanity's legacy to the stars. Not our capacity for war, but our stubborn insistence on finding hope in the most hopeless places. As the ceremony concluded, the first native species of the restored world, a small, iridescent flying creature, landed on the monument, drawn to its gentle energy. Life, once harvested to extinction, had returned. The impact had been made. The transformation was complete, and across the galaxy, worlds once thought lost forever prepared for rebirth.